data that we have from our field excursions and from watching mass samplings shown on TV of general peoples, there seems to be a rather homogeneous spread of mojos. If not homogeneous, much closer in a similarity of spread than is shown in any of the other models that try to determine such thing as a cognitive functionality preference within populations. The Niji in other models that have some correlation with it often place the Niji as being the most rare of mojos, but this is actually not true. And then if you look at the data we're showing as far as celebrities that are coming out, it looks like Niji are everywhere. It's raining Niji. So what is it? And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, it's actually just that they're like everyone else, but they as far as the misreadings, we talk about that. We're now going to talk about why they do show up so often. So there's a whole section on why they misread and people don't think they are Niji, but now why it looks like you can't go anywhere and not see Niji as far as public figures. There are a variety of factors for this. One is that Nai is obsessed with greatness, about achieving greatness. So like the Niji naturally lives a life and contemplates how one would be great. And as a Niji particularly, it becomes personal, of how would I personally achieve greatness. I want to, it's an obsession. You can call it just relentless curiosity or just a thirst for enlightenment, but there is a desire, an ambition to actually know more about life and existence and everything than anyone else, or anyone else has come so far. So that you can feel, everyone needs to feel that they've done special things in their life to feel like they lived well. So different mojos have different things that make them feel special. For Niji, there's a great sense of needing to have tasted something that is completely original and hopefully unprecedented and hopefully outstanding, amazing, off the charts, epic. So that's what it wants to do as a power. And combined with the G, it wants to be able to enact this in some way. So this does not mean that greatness and being known are synonymous, but they have a lot to do with one another, because the Niji may define greatness in different ways, but a lot of ways you define greatness usually mean becoming the top of something, right? The top in a field, like the whatever that would mean, top in some academia, top in spiritual, top in arts. That would make you feel like you had reached a vista that was truly apex for humans, so you can say, I had been there. And this is key. One thing you got to know about Niji is Niji do break a lot of records, but that doesn't mean that their life is just better and they're more awesome than other people. There's a price that goes with that. There can be a whole life where you never reach it. Lots of Niji never get there. Other ones, you reach it, but then as soon as you reach it, you need to go somewhere else. And so there are these long stretches between feeling great. But that's what keeps a Niji going. In fact, Niji are kind of wired to almost streamline all of life to where they aren't doing what most other humans are doing, almost losing credit in many other aspects of life in order to get mega credit in these certain areas. Anyone who's played role-playing games will know the concept of bonus stacking. Niji like to know that. They'll basically take a character and they'll mortgage different things that they don't need in order to just bonus stack it out the wazoo. So like, what is the most freaking bonus stacked elf ranger you can come up with? Like if you just bonus stacked it to like to Kingdom Come, how bonus stack could you make it? Because I want to play that character. It comes to do with the character shifting is, there can be a desire to where you only want to play one character or a certain character, and you will go through great lengths. For example, I want to be a UFC champion. And just living on that and doing everything in order to play that character for one night. Or maybe you keep the belt for a few months, a few years. It's worth it to play that character for that time. The greatness is that important. So that naturally means that a lot of Niji will get noticed and put into record books and put on TV and magazines because they're out breaking records. Next, if you bring in the record-breaking thing, there's also the way Naiji go about doing this, is that even if they aren't trying to get notoriety, they often do get it because if you try and be great, you usually have to do some fairly freaky stuff to pull it off. So even if you were like, I'm going to be the most zen dude ever, or deep dude, the most deep dude ever, and I'm going to go off in the woods and be Mr. Deep Dude. Okay, a lot of Naiji have done that. And a lot of them done it really, really well. And eventually, a few weeks later, a few years later, a few decades later, a few centuries later, people find that. And they actually decipher what the fuck that meant. They're like, I think some dude went in the middle of nowhere and did such and such and such and such for like 5 decades. And then didn't tell nobody. So even though he didn't have notoriety at the time, usually ends up becoming notoriety because when they eventually see the section on cave dwelling in the Naiji. Once they do, if they don't always find Naiji caves, but when you do tend to find a Naiji cave, some fairly weird, freaky, crazy shit has occurred there. So even if they were actually, because you said a lot of Naiji are super secretive, so you're like, how can they be so famous if they're so secretive? Well, those are the ones you found. But any of the ones you do find, you're generally going to have quite a story to tell. So that causes notoriety as well. The next part is that the simulator. The simulator for the Naiji is super powerful as it is for all the subjective directives. But the Nai gives this visionary driving quality that makes you ignore what the world tells you is real, doable, possible, achievable. And then when you combine it with the G, that simulator tells you how to act. Naiji aren't like this. It doesn't actually tell them how they must play the game. The Naiji simulator does. In fact, the Naiji simulator and the Vaiji simulator, the only two that are like that, where they tell you how you're supposed to play in order to be the hero. Like you're getting hero points from your Nai or your Vi as you act out. And if you act out, regardless, here's the thing about notoriety, regardless of how the environment takes you, you get credit for what the simulator says. So if you have a Vaiji, if they actually treat a person in a certain, maybe old-fashioned but courteous way, the environment may be like, oh, that's kind of archaic. But for them, their Vi will reward them. That was good conduct, irregardless of the environment's rewarding. Okay, so that can just seem like, oh, they're a little kind of like anachronistic. It gets much more eccentric with Naiji because it's Nai, not Vi. So their Nai tells them that they need to eat, I don't know, oranges for like 3 months because that's the way to find enlightenment. And then they tell them that maybe they need to, like, who knows, go live on the top of a mountain and do nothing but like do a handstand for an hour a day every day. It can be ridiculous, but if their spirits tell them that's the way to get to the next enlightenment level, then that Naiji will hit that obstacle course fanatical style, and it'll get done. So again, many Naiji has no interest in actually being on camera or being famous at all. But when people see, they drive by their cars and there's someone who's put out some sort of bizarre ninja warrior obstacle course out in the Utah desert and is hitting it like serious, like they're out there fanatical style, like a hardcore athlete, people notice that, and then often Naiji get annoyed because they really weren't trying to get noticed. They actually saw Ninja Warrior on TV and they're like, that's cool, I want to be able to do that. And their spirit's like, yeah, you'd be totally like an RPG badass if you could actually do a ninja course. So you go and craft one. You sell all your other hobby things and you put all your money into making some obstacle course. So, not that anyone doesn't do that. Lots of mojos do that, but Naiji do it more frequently and on a scale that is it is truly unprecedented. So that everyone goes like, this one line gets said a lot. Who does shit like that? And people just stand stunned that you did that. And Naiji often do that on purpose, but many times they weren't trying to do it on purpose, and many times they're purposely trying to hide that they're doing it. Any and all of these, once they're discovered, will tend to get known because there aren't too many people that do that. In any given era, in any given city, in any given precinct, in any given anywhere, they're just, that's noteworthy. So Naiji, if you think about being in storytelling, they tell you basically take life, pump up the cool shit, and take out all the boring parts. That's the basic secret to storytelling. Real life, take out boring stuff and ramp up the cool stuff. So for Naiji, they basically live like ghosts a lot of the times until they're going to have one of their shape-shifting character moments. But that tends to be really weird, and also epically weird, because if a Naiji, for example, was into having 1,000 comic books of a certain series and reciting all the lines within that, once they pull that off, they're going to want to do it with something else. It's like an addiction. Like, once you've actually done something that weird and big, it doesn't go away. The itch doesn't go away. In fact, you just switched into something else, or more often you go Kensei on it, and you're just sort of like, I could do 2,000 comics. I could do 3,000 comics and do the guy and girls parts. I could do all the comics and actually, and basically it just never stops. Then eventually, often that becomes movies. Many Naiji, that's how it starts. They're sort of like, they tell stories to their friends, then they add the stories out, then they do little props, and they're like, let's get money and go big on this. You just can't stop. So that actually is very, very common. So that again contributes to being notoriety. And there are other reasons. We're fanatical. Fanaticism is different than just, wow, that's really weird. It's intense in a scary way. So it tends to be an unnerving quality to the way Naiji do things. So yes, like I mentioned, the person actually built, this is key, this is not a person with a lot of money. So that's one thing you want to do, is like how they do that, because they tend to spend every last dollar they can get on it. So although the person, is eating mayonnaise sandwiches and can't even afford to get good Crystal Light, they actually are able to build a Ninja Warrior gymnasium in the back of their Utah desert. So that in itself is noteworthy. But then when you watch them train on it, they're not fucking around. This was not for like idle amusement in the desert. This is like some sort of Shaolin, like, am I a hero or not kind of thing. And like, if he actually ran that obstacle course like 5 minutes the day before, then if he's a true fanatic, he'll break that the next day and the next day. He has to keep doing that, or you know what? He's not a true believer. It's weird, but that's what the Phenomena demands. And if you can't keep breaking that record, if you can't keep doing that obstacle course better, then the simulator is like, what can you do? That's how it thinks. Could you build a bigger course? Maybe you're not supposed to be the athlete anymore. Maybe you're supposed to be the organizer. How about you actually have 100 people come here and do it? Any way to make it, whatever it is, bigger and better. So again, that tends to get noticed. Other things, also see the section on anti-establishment. Generally speaking, what goes on in the world gets done by the establishment, as far as like saying what happened and what goes where. So although there's actually kind of an uneasy relationship there, they'd actually like to not have it, that many of these crazy anti-establishment things happen. They're often cited as like things to not do. Don't be like that person. So Naiji often break a lot of records that actually are like, wow, that's cool, you should be like that. But they also do things that establishment will actually cite in legal things of like, do not be the citizen. This is not how you're supposed to be. This brings the system down. So there's all kinds of places that you'll find the Naiji use as an example of, be like this, don't be like this, that's really weird. Can you believe humans would do a thing like? There's a lot of that going on. The other, the Naiji, being the Nijai, everyone has an other and it does inspire them, but there's a very personal relationship because it's a Nez with Jez powers. So Naiji truly had this like fanatical, metaphysical lover relationship with their other, and what they will do to impress this creature really has no bounds. So a lot of other things that you can get known for, such as building, not just big buildings, big, unprecedented, freaky, like, how did you design that? Because a lot of times Naiji will design things that are extremely visionary and inventive, and the reason is because their other wants that. Not saying this person was, because no forensic facts, but like a kind of metaphor for this, or analogy would be like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. If that was a Naiji king, and his Nijai queen, who he was totally in love with, actually was like, I like you, but I really miss my gardens and back home. He's like, we're getting fucking gardens for you that'll blow away those gardens back there. And so it doesn't matter what the current technology or resource of land can currently do, they need to make those gardens happen. So again, I don't know if that person was actually doing that specifically to get known in all of history. he was maybe just doing that to get known by that girl and also maybe to impress his own particular people. But he did such a good job that more than just the local citizens or denizens of the area noticed that. That got noticed for quite some time. So that's pretty good.